Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar sparks global backlash. Russian drones breach NATO airspace again. Nepal appoints first female prime minister amid deadly protest. Deadly floods displace over 100,000 in South Sudan. Good afternoon and welcome to Around the World in 30 Minutes on Politics and Business Television Abuja. I am Bulus Joannery. Many thanks for joining us. Well, Israel launched a surprise airstrike targeting senior Hamas leaders residing in Qatar, bypassing Arab airspace and catching even the U.S. off guard. The operation has drawn sharp criticism from the United Arab Emirates, which summoned Israel's deputy ambassador over what is called hostile and unacceptable actions. The strike has complicated ceasefire negotiations in Gaza, where over 40 Palestinians were killed in recent Israeli raids. Families of hostages in Tel Aviv are protesting, demanding the government prioritize diplomacy over escalation. Meanwhile, in a bold counter-terrorism operation, Israeli forces have arrested several operatives from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Syria. The arrests were made during a targeted raid near the city of Aleppo, where the operatives were allegedly coordinating weapons transfers to Hezbollah. The Israeli Defense Forces disclosed the arrest amid rising tensions in the region, citing intelligence that links the operatives to recent drone attacks on Israeli territory. Iran has condemned the operation, calling it a violation of Syrian sovereignty, while the UN Security Council is expected to convene to discuss the implications. In the meantime, Poland reported another incursion by Russian drones into its airspaces, prompting NATO allies to scramble fighter jets in response. This marks the second breach in a week, raising fears of a broader conflict spilling over from Ukraine. The UN Security Council is holding emergency sessions to address the growing threat of drone warfare, which has become a central tactic in modern conflicts. Romania also reported a similar breach, intensifying regional security concerns. Turning now to South Asia, Sushila Karki, former Chief Justice of Nepal's Supreme Court, has been appointed interim Prime Minister following violent youth-led protest that left 61 dead. Her immediate goal is to restore order and prepare for fresh elections. The protest erupted over social media restrictions and government corruption, prompting international calls for reform. UN agencies have expressed solidarity with Nepal and urged peaceful democratic transition. And while that unfolds, President Donald Trump has ordered the deployment of 1,000 National Guard troops to Louisiana's urban centers to combat rising crime. The move has sparked debate over federal intervention in local law enforcement. Critics argue the deployment could escalate tensions, while supporters say it is a necessary step to restore public safety. Trump emphasized the urgency of the situation in Memphis, citing record-breaking homicide rates. Well, you're still watching Politics and Business Television Abuja. Still to come, Taliban ban on women aid workers halts earthquake relief in Afghanistan. Stay with us. Russia successfully launched a Zircon hypersonic cruise missile during joint military exercises with Belarus. The test is seen as a show of strength amid rising tensions with NATO, especially following drone incursions into Poland. The missile, capable of traveling at 9 times the speed of sound, was fired from a naval platform and hit its targets with precision. Western analysts warn that such developments could destabilize Eastern Europe further. In another part of the world, the UN reports that over 100,000 people have been displaced in South Sudan due to catastrophic flooding. Torrential rains have submerged entire villages, cutting off access to food, water, and medical aid. Humanitarian agencies are struggling to reach affected areas, and the crisis is expected to worsen with more rain forecasted. The UNHCR has called for urgent international assistance to prevent a full-blown humanitarian disaster. Now, at the same time, relief efforts following a devastating earthquake in Afghanistan have been severely hampered by Taliban restrictions on female aid workers. The UN says essential services have been cut, leaving thousands without medical care or shelter. The ban has drawn condemnation from global humanitarian organizations who argue that excluding women from relief operations violates international law and worsens the crisis. Negotiations with Taliban officials are ongoing. In other news, a new UN report has found that the human rights situation in North Korea remains dire, with the death penalty more widely allowed by law and implemented in practice than a decade ago. The report highlights increased surveillance, forced labor, and public executions as part of the regime's tightening grip. International human rights organizations are urging stronger global action, including sanctions and diplomatic pressure. The report also calls for renewed efforts to engage Pyongyang on humanitarian grounds, especially as food shortages and economic isolation continue to plague the country. And that wraps up the program, but before we go, the headlines again. Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar sparks global backlash. Russian drones breach NATO airspace again. Nepal appoints first female prime minister amid deadly protest. Deadly floods displace over 100,000 in South Sudan. For more updates and in-depth analysis, follow Politics and Business Television English on YouTube and Facebook. Connect with us on Instagram at PNBTV.English and TikTok at PNBTV.English. Remember to subscribe and stay informed. From me, Bulus Joanna Ray, do have a lovely day. Bye for now.